Hello and welcome to the first episode of Metacognitive Monday. This is a program that's going to be looking at the world from a metacognitive perspective. I'm Dr. Phil Hulbig, and my intention with this program is to take over the world with metacognition. And in this first episode, I'm going to be discussing some of the things I've been thinking about and my basic plan on how I will actually take over the world with metacognition. I'm going to try to talk you into joining my broader social movement, which is around mentorship and how mentorship can be used to take over the world with metacognition. I'm going to explain to you how to be a great mentor and why I believe mentorship is a fundamental component of developing the ability to learn. And yet, for some reason, mentorship is sometimes an afterthought, an add-on to your education, when you're struggling and you don't know what to do. Unfortunately, when people sign up for mentorship in a desperate state like this, they often miss the real power of mentorship. According to educational study after educational study, a key feature of successful learning is the formation of a strong learning relationship. And I believe it can be one of the most important factors in achieving a state of self-directed lifelong learning. And this is a key feature of mentorship. Now, why is relationship so important? Well, with the exception of the last century, all learning done by humans would have come from interactions with another human that you had some kind of direct relationship with. For hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, hundreds of thousands of years, you learned from another human that was physically there. But then came the invention of books, and then radio, and then TV, and finally the internet, which have made learning from people that you have less and less of a physical relationship with more and more possible. However, science is finding that this phenomenon, called a relationship, continues to play a very fundamental role in learning. Even with all of this technology and new capacity to learn from others across the globe, it has been found that we still need to relate to the information presented. And if you can't see the relationship in the information presented, you just don't learn it. Even the fundamental logic of learning is relational. Understanding can be thought of as the ability to see certain abstract relationships, particularly those that exist at higher levels of complexity, because it's precisely the ability to take in and accommodate different relationships that allows for understanding to manifest. In fact, identifying certain kinds of relationship are all that a computer is really good at. But human understanding seems to grow out of these relationships, which is why so many people believe that we are really close to producing a functioning general artificial intelligence. There's even reason to believe that this relationship-driven process of understanding may be connected to the fine-grained structure of the universe, since it seems that the behaviors of nerve synapses in the brain may be regulated by even smaller subcellular structures. It's been hypothesized by Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff that the cells may be using a physical property called quantum entanglement, which I'm not going to get into too deeply here, but suffice to say that entanglement is a natural process that allows information transfer to occur at the smallest levels if a relationship is present. Put simply, physicists have found you can take two particles, you can get them to form a relationship with each other, and now they have the ability to send a message using their behavior, their spin, which affects the behavior of the other particle. Now, I'm not a quantum physicist, I'm a special educator, but when you have lots of signs, particularly those coming from lots of different domains, like we see here with relationship, and these signs are all pointing at the same thing, you can be pretty sure that what you're looking at is important. And I'm going to suggest to you that relationships are important at every level of learning, from a fundamental physical level to an essentially social level. Every way you look at the problem of learning, you are either making or using or developing a relationship. Mentors put relationship first in their practice, and this is why they are uniquely important to our education. Now, both mentors and teachers find themselves educating another person, and at one time, teachers were considered mentors too. But modern education practices have sort of divided this role. Unfortunately, the role of teachers in modern education has started to become something similar to an information vending machine, particularly at the college level, where people believe you just put your money in and you receive all the information that you need to be considered a teacher or a businessman or a doctor. But learning doesn't seem to really work that way. The processes of teaching and learning do not fit the business paradigm that we've been using. And this is why I believe education, and particularly American education, is in trouble these days. We simply no longer provide the level of mentorship that is necessary for advanced academic development. I believe that it was at one time a broad and diverse mentorship experience that supported the success of students in American schools. But education fell into trouble in my lifetime because teachers, we really pushed to be seen more as professionals like businessmen or doctors. The idea was a noble one. And for many years, I believed it also. Because as a teacher, you're looking at how hard and complex your job is, and it seems insulting that you would make such little money when compared to other professionals doing work of similar complexity and importance. So the idea was to turn education into a profession, like a doctor or a businessman. Because the thought was professionals get paid more money. But sadly, that did not happen. Today, we have far more well-trained teaching professionals than ever before. But instead of making more money, the average teacher today is even more financially insecure than ever, with many leaving the career because they cannot find a job that will even cover the expenses of the student loans that they were required to take out to enter the profession. And if we look at student performance, the big move to make teaching a profession came in 1989, and you can see it had virtually no impact on student scores. However, we have been increasing spending at a fairly steady clip. Then, in the early 2000s, we went even further and declared that we were not going to leave any children behind, and we were going to do that by injecting more business-like practices into the education system. We would inject more competition. We would punish and even let schools fail so that better-run schools could come in and take their place, just like we see in industries like fast food and toothpaste. Unfortunately, this did not have an impact. It made a bad situation worse, which was further exacerbated by the pandemic that accelerated this deterioration, leading many of the first businesses that pushed this model to flee when their profits never materialized, leaving even more school districts with divided and less viable public schools. And surprise of surprise, many of these school districts were the historically poor. Rather than business models or cold professionalism, we need to realize learning and mentorship are fundamental. They are like breathing and eating. Sure, you could force such necessities into a money-making scheme, but withholding food and air so that someone could make money off it would clearly be seen as a human rights violation, right? So what I'm suggesting to you is that the type of learning that you receive from a skilled mentor is a necessary human right, because it's not just teaching, it's also learning, because learning enhances teaching and teaching enhances learning. They are integrated. They are part of the human maturation process. When students are deprived of having mentors, they suffer. But what is less appreciated, but even more true, is when students are deprived of the opportunity to be a mentor, they also suffer. We know that taking on the responsibilities of leadership is good for people, especially young people, especially boys who, because we're primates, it turns out boys really need those positive leadership opportunities to develop into healthy young men. But more than this, just from a straight educational perspective, we know that nothing helps a person understand something better and more thoroughly than teaching it to another person. I would suggest to you that one of the reasons our education system is failing right now is a lack of consistent mentorship for all students. Students are less likely now to have a mentor than at any other time in American history because there are just fewer intact homes with fewer siblings. Parents are away more hours at work. They're divorced. They're traumatized. And in school, teachers refuse to mentor in the name of setting professional boundaries, or they just don't see it as part of their job description. And even the teachers that would like to do more mentorship find that they were working in these banking model schools that are run like businesses. So they're just not afforded the time to do this kind of work. And perhaps worse than all of this is at all levels and at all times, everyone is being called away from real, genuine human relationships by the siren song of their screens. At this same time, many have seen a contraction of their school budgets and an increase in conflict in society generally, which has closed clubs, organizations, and other leadership opportunities that were classically there for young people outside of the family, leaving students with even fewer opportunities to learn the craft of mentorship, which I believe is having a knock-off effect on academic performance generally. My hypothesis is that you will be able to show that communities with less access to mentorship opportunities for youth will be the communities with the lowest test scores. Why? Well, mentoring is fundamentally important to learning. This is because what mentors do is form a relationship that intends to help their mentees solve problems that confront them. And this can be intimidating. And for some people that I've talked to, this is really what deters them from mentoring. Because there's no guarantee that as a mentor, you won't make a mistake. Or you might be confronted with a problem you've never been confronted with before. But how you deal with ambiguity is, in a sense, even more important to teaching than knowing the answer to any one given problem. This is because it covers an entire class of problems, the most difficult class of problems that people can be confronted with. Most people don't even realize that there is, in fact, a way to reason through complex and ambiguous problems. There is, in fact, an approach that can greatly reduce the number of mistakes that you make. A simple mentorship technique that I'm going to share with you now. I am sharing it with you in the hope that you will join my educational revolution. You see, my big plan is to take over the world with metacognition. Metacognition is part of a natural, inborn style of problem solving that is available to every person. And every person within the sound of my voice will be able to start employing it and joining my revolution right now, simply by becoming a great mentor to somebody. What's the secret to being a great mentor? Well, the secret is problem solving. If you can teach your students how to problem solve, your students will be successful. Virtually everything you do as a mentor will revolve around some kind of problem that you and your mentee are confronting. And if either of you master problem solving, the reward will be this thing called self-authorship, a state of ability where you can develop and self-direct your own learning towards achieving the goals, as well as tracking down and connecting with the people you need to achieve those goals to support your success. Problem solving turns out to be surprisingly universal. It turns out the greatest scientists use essentially the same process of problem solving as children. They develop theories through observation, identification, prediction, and sense-making. In fact, the first person to describe the steps of the modern scientific method was a philosopher and educator, John Dewey, who made these discoveries while studying the problem-solving behavior of children. Just applying a little self-reflection can go a long way in solving a problem. If you can learn to engage in that reflection in a purposeful, metacognitive way, well, then you're going to get even more bang for your buck. But if you can turn this process into a personal practice, it has the capacity to become more automatic and more accurate for you over time. Now, if you join me here and become a mentor, the mentee you get, well, they might have some sort of problem that interferes with their learning. But all of these problems stem from differences in the way that we all experience the world. We all have problems. Some people simply don't see or perceive certain problems that confront them, so they can't mount an effective response to them. Increasingly, In these cases, there is one thing that you can do to help them work through these obscure problems, and that's metacognitive reflection. Reflection is simply the best intervention for solving complex personal problems. And any kind of environmental support that amplifies the important signals during a person's reflection process will be a benefit. And that is often all you're doing as a mentor. You are amplifying those signals so that your mentee can see them. And then, if you're one of the good ones, one of the great mentors, you'll attempt to demonstrate how a solution could be reached. Interestingly, these perceptual differences can be biological or socially induced. The socially induced perceptual overlay is often underpinned by this running narrative that we all carry in our heads, forged out of social beliefs about how learning is supposed to work and norms about limitation that have gone uninvestigated within you. This failure is also best addressed by reflection, but it is an embodied reflection that's personal, and it can get emotional at some times. As a mentor, you are supporting your mentees in their efforts to see how their assumptions are affecting their behavior and their choices. Mentoring people about their biological differences was really first put into practice here at Curry College. It was the genius of Dr. Gertrude Webb, founder of the PAL program, who realized that you could teach a person about biological experiences that may be affecting their learning. By helping a person understand learning in this way, well, it leads them to realize that they're not defective, which is sadly how many neurologically diverse people think about themselves, because that's pretty much what they've been told forever. But when you start to learn about your own learning, disability, in the classic sense of the word, becomes overshadowed by an understanding of applying strengths and weaknesses about your learning, just like everybody else does. Now, maybe you have a weakness that's more pronounced than someone else's, but the key is coming to an understanding of what your weaknesses are and how you can work around them or neutralize them by using and building upon your strengths. One other idea of Dr. Webb's that's also central to my revolution in metacognition is the idea of hope. If, as a mentor, you can learn to bring hope to your mentee, you will have cracked the code. And I don't think that hope is something that is easily taught. Plus, there are a lot of competing experiences that teach hopelessness. Dr. Webb felt it had a lot to do with experiences of success, and that repeated success built sort of this core self that was capable of taking on more and more responsibility and productive behavior. I believe that she was right, but I do believe that there is another source of hope. It can be produced when you simply spend time with another person, where you intend to help them with their problem. Just the presence of a person who truly intends to support you and see you through is a source of hope, particularly in the most hopeless situations. So now you know. You know why I feel mentorship is so vitally important. You know the secret of being a successful mentor and some tips that you'll no doubt use every day if you choose to join the ranks, the few, the proud, the mentors. So please join me in my plan to take over the world with metacognition and hopefully get every person within the sound of my voice a mentor and a chance to help support a mentee, help stand up for this important human right, the right to educate and be educated and self-develop. Thank you.